Podcasters Roundtable round 108. No title today because we're trying something different. After 107 rounds, I think Dave and I always talk about, man, what's the topic this time? What do we come up with? And all of you, podcastersroundtable.com/guest, if you want to be on the roundtable, it's going to be easier now, I think, too, because that's where you go to submit to be on the roundtable. And it's also where you can have suggestions of what you want to talk about. Well, a lot of the things that people bring up over 107 rounds start to be the same. So I don't want to repeat too much content. Obviously, there are subjects we can talk about again and again, and we will continue to do that. But we're going to try the roundtablers that are on the round, including Dave and myself. We're going to grab stories from the last week or 2 weeks, any relevant story to podcasting, and we're going to discuss those. So I think it'll also give more people opportunity to join the roundtable. Obviously, nothing revolutionary going on here. You see this format all the time in our niche, whatever, it happens. I think that our unique value add here, though, is the roundtablers themselves. We get to hear your opinions. You don't hear the same two blowhards on every round and get their opinions only. We get different blowhards on here every time.
Five blowhards this time, right? Six, yeah.
Yeah, so this is going to be our value add, is getting more opinions from the community. So hopefully that works out. Let us know if you like this format. You might not have a choice, because in order to keep the topics going and interesting, we need to keep talking about new things. All right, let's meet the roundtable. New roundtabler. We fulfilled our requirement. Chris, welcome. Finally, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here, finally.
What's your podcast?
My podcast this week. Actually, a podcast at goodstuff.fm with some friends, and that's sort of the main home for, as some of us do. And rather than setting up a new website every time, we just kind of collected all our efforts together in one domain, and .fm went for the expensive .fm domain, and that's what we do. So I have a podcast called Show Me Your Mic that's about podcasting, interviewing other podcasters. That's a bit on a bit of a hiatus right now, but there's a bunch of other shows for anybody who's interested in either the band U2, some daily podcasting, a Good Stuff morning show that a friend does, Clockworks, which is like a Legion podcast. Yeah, a bunch of stuff. Anyways, good stuff.
Okay, only one.
Sorry,
one.
I slipped a couple in there.
Yeah, that's right. You're just filling Daniel J's the role for this week. Right? It's good at getting those plugs in. But goodstuff.fm is one of my favorite brandings. You guys do really clean stuff there, and I'm a fan of that. So definitely check it out. The content's probably good too. I have no idea.
Just the logo. Just look at the logo. Yeah.
Co-host Dave Jackson, welcome back.
Yeah, I'm Dave Jackson from the schoolofpodcasting.com.
All right, and Emily, who has been here before, returning roundtabler, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, hi, I'm Emily Prokop from the storybehindpodcast.com, and I'm 1/5 of my way to a shirt.
Oh, she's keeping track. We're in trouble. I'm in trouble. That means you never make it to.
I know. I get to number 9, and then that's it.
That's got to be your best show, because you get ghosted. Oh, I've never got to use that term. All right, just gets ghosted. Very cool. Returning roundtabler, who's probably close to being kicked off himself because we can't afford T-shirts on the roundtable. Paul Colligan, welcome back.
Shirts? I didn't hear about the shirts.
You show up 10 times, you get a shirt.
Oh, man.
It's a myth.
Oh.
What's your show, Paul?
The Podcast Report at thepodcastreport.com.
Yeah, and speaking of switching formats, I'm pretty sure the Podcast Report has switched formats at least once in its iteration, right?
Oh, multiple times. Season 5, actually closing up season 5, going to go to 6. So switching it's the playground for me. It's where I get to test everything. And so I do things that make sense. And I don't know, sneak preview. I think the next season of the Podcast Report will be done live on Facebook. Invite everybody to the live studio audience recording of the whole thing, and then send it out by audio. So should be fun.
Very cool. Yeah, almost made me wanted to go roundtable and dive into one topic there, because I am curious. I have to ask, since you're here, when we get anyone on who does something different, we want to ask, why did you switch? How has it worked out?
Well, this starts with the next episode. So the Podcast Report has always been a chance for me to test what's going on. My audience goes with me, they journey with me. And so I've always purposefully tried to figure out what to do. Last season, I actually handed the entire thing over to a podcasting consultant. You'll find a report coming soon about what went well and what didn't go well with that.
Those are the worst people to put in charge of your podcast.
Exactly. And so now I'm going to look at the live thing, and I think it'll work. I think it'll be fun. The audience enjoys the switch. Just the fact that you brought it up means somebody's paying attention.
Did you suffer? Did you get more people, or did people leave? Did you get pushback?
No, it's about the same. It's more just well, I mean, this for all podcasters, we have a message, and the second you hand that message over to somebody else, that idea that the consultant's going to pick up what the most important points were, what the bullets are for the show notes, that kind of thing, that just didn't happen. And so, and part of that was partially my fault because, abdicating my, authority to teach or whatnot was part of the process, but I wasn't necessarily thrilled with it, but it helped me learn. I mean, I do podcast consulting myself. So what's the good and what's the bad of it? There was a learning lesson for all. There will probably be a recap show. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus. It's more than anything a learning process for me.
Very cool. And I will say there's always something to go see at podcastersroundtable.com. The video is what I'm saying. We do this video, it's for audio, but there is always an added value to go check out in the video. And I would say this time it's Paul's video. He's using DSLR video. To me, that looks amazing. Feels quite ironic that Paul's leading the way in the tech, because his whole spiel is to, don't let the tech, it's not time for the tech. It's about the content, which I agree. Tech's important. And he does get that. I can see that. So his presentation looks amazing. You should check out his video. And I think he'll probably be talking more about how that's done. In fact, I think I've used it as well. So, all right, let's move on. I have my first story here, and this is actually a roundtable I tried to create around one topic, but it just it morphed into what we're doing here. And there was an article that came out. It's Dan. I don't know if I'm saying his name, Missner. You guys think it's Missner? Something like that. Meisner. Yeah, it works. He said, do podcasters really need to beg for ratings and reviews? And I thought this was interesting because this is something you hear all the time. Please rate and review our show. Go rate and review our show. Really helps us out, gets us discovered in Apple iTunes or Apple Podcasts, right? I think people, they put a lot of weight into ratings and reviews, and I'm wondering what drives that. Why? Why are people always asking for ratings, reviews? First of all, let me ask, do any of you, is that a call to action in any of your podcasts? You guys, it may have been at one time. Is it currently? Give me both those, I guess. Chris, ratings and reviews, do you ask for those on your shows?
I think it's definitely not a regular reoccurring thing we do. Occasionally on some of the shows we will, just to put it out there, I guess. But I'm always of the probably shooting myself in the foot with false humility almost, and like begging for stuff and not wanting to sort of self-promote. And so I avoid it at all costs generally. And so I think occasionally we've done it, and it's fun when you see a good review. It's more like we kind of do it as a promotional thing of like, hey, leave a funny review and we'll read it on the next episode and that kind of stuff. And as a way of just kind of getting audience participation. But it's rarely like a regular call for action on any of our shows, which maybe they suffer because of that. But
Dave?
Yeah, I don't really submit for them on occasion. Maybe once a month I might say. But what I always say is go out and subscribe to the show. And while you're there, if you feel so moved, leave a review. But I would much rather have a subscriber than a 5-star review. 5-star reviews are great for social proof. But in terms of actually getting me up the charts, as far as we can tell, it doesn't do a whole lot. And even getting up the charts is the big question of, like, does that do anything for you?
Right. That's a good one. Like, even if you manage to find a way to get up the charts, doesn't matter. Let's stick with ratings and reviews because we could really go down a rat hole on that one. And Daniel has looked into this in the past, and I think he did a whole presentation. I think it was a Podcast Movement 2017. And he was saying that ratings and reviews don't affect ranking. And he showed data to back that. And there were shows that had 0 reviews, but had ranked near the top. And that ratings and reviews may actually, it's sort of social proof, I say. And I guess there's a difference, because I'd say in Dan's article, he talks about how some apps do use rankings and reviews. But of course, we usually deal with the 300-pound gorilla, or is it 800 pound? It's 800 pound? I don't know. It's a lot of weight gorilla. That is Apple Podcast. So I guess we should clarify when we're talking about the two. But I don't know, Paul, do you know, what's your thought on this?
Last week we launched the Frank Kern podcast, and it was neat because we saw Frank go to number 3 in his category, which I think is a pretty good ranking, with absolutely 0 reviews. And that was last week. And now Frank is beloved, and a couple hours later, the reviews started flying in. But I have a screenshot of Frank at number 3 with 0 reviews, and that was last week. So it's just not necessary.
So what's interesting to me about that is that you screenshotted it as some type of proof. So
Exactly.
So what's going on there? What are you trying to prove?
No, well, there's just this. We as podcasters like to hold on to ideas and concepts that maybe aren't necessarily true. And, all the time you hear, give me a rating. And, when somebody says, give me a rating and review because it's the only pay I get, I actually like to go review those people because, for most podcasters, it is the only pay they get. But when the podcaster says, give me a review, it helps us in iTunes. I just want to shudder because, what else are they believing that is incorrect? And what else are they focusing on? I had a consulting call today with a client who's like, well, and we can't launch until I have 10 episodes, and I was like, okay, and so I like to get the screenshots whenever I can of the things that prove the common mistakes wrong.
All right. So since we're all about starting somewhere and then going down a different, falling down a deep well, that 10 episode thing, why is that a myth? Why is that bugging you?
Well, because first of all, people say because it gets me a lot of downloads. It doesn't. All the podcatchers download the most recent episode, period. And so if you pour out your heart, your soul, your vision in episode 1, do a big launch, put out 10 episodes, everybody downloads episode 10. They don't know what you're doing. They don't know why you're doing it. They don't get any context. They don't get anything. Sure, we can do the tag for the serial ordering. But the other thing they say is because they say that it increases your downloads, and it just doesn't. So it's a bad experience for your customer. It's people don't get to find out what it is that you want. It's not true, but other than that, it's a really good idea, I guess.
Okay, I actually do really like you're bringing up an issue that that hasn't necessarily thought of before, is that 10 typically would show up first, which is very important. I think, I don't know, anyone who finds a podcast usually comes in at 50 or 59 or 159. Right. So I don't know how much that matters on a launch. I do like to have at least 3 episodes just because if someone does find it and loves it, they're like, I want more, right? There's a lot of binge listening happening. So is there a happy medium in there?
Well, it all depends on what you're doing. If you are launching your podcast to find your audience, it doesn't really matter. And many of us did that. Many of us started there.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
Well, if you don't know who your audience is and you're hoping to be found and you're hoping to be discovered, it really doesn't matter how many episodes you have. But most of my clients are ready for the big launch. They do the big mailing, they do the big promotion, maybe a press release or that type of thing. So they're introducing thousands and thousands of people to their show in a 24-hour time period. And if you get the opportunity to introduce thousands and thousands of people to your show, put them to the pilot, give them the vision for what's going on. And then the other thing too, when you ask people to subscribe, now like Dave, always ask them to subscribe because that's the power of podcasting. And the thing is, if I go to a podcast page and there's 500 episodes, I'm not going to subscribe because I know I can come back and take a look at. But if there's one and that episode really called to me, subscribe to get the next one the moment it's released. People will do that. And it just depends on what you're doing it for.
Oh, there's so much we could go. I feel like we just keep going. I don't know. Anyone else want to come back at any of that? Not come back, like refute it. I'm saying any ideas.
Or refute it. Have fun. It's a roundtable.
Yes, we do want to punch holes. But what do you guys think? I mean, how many, Dave, you help people. Yeah. Emily, you help people. Forget Dave. Dave's here. You help people start podcasts. Where are you at in this philosophy of having episodes? I do understand that, like, if people say, I can't launch till I have 10, sometimes they just never launch because they can't even get those 10 out, right? We don't want to prevent things. And I think that's a big thing that Paul's probably trying to prevent is, like, you got to get out there, right? So I don't know. Where are you at, Emily, on the...
I tell them 3. 3 would be the magic number for me, just because that's what they're putting out to the audience they already have. And then that's also going to be the audience who will give them the feedback of, this didn't work. I didn't really like how you did that. I want you to talk more about this and this. Whereas, and I'm basically repeating Dave. Like, I feel like I have a little Dave in my head because I know he's said this before. It's like, if you put out 30 and you put out one every day, you already have 30 in the can. People are already like, oh, this isn't what I wanted from that person. I'm just going to tune out and go to another podcast or something. But you put out 3, ask for that feedback from your audience, get that feedback. You don't have to take every single piece of it, keep it your show, but being able to have just a few right in there, and especially for binging, because I am a binge listener. If somebody comes out, they're like, I'm putting out this podcast and it's brand new. I mean, I'm not going to say no to a new podcast that sounds amazing just because they have 1 or 2 episodes. But like you, I am going to subscribe so that I don't miss the other ones either.
Can I give some hard numbers on 3? I have a case study.
Yeah.
Yes.
So JJ Virgin, who by the way, Dave's interview with JJ Virgin is like one of my favorite interviews in a long time. Dave, hats off. That was fantastic.
Thank you, sir.
JJ wanted to launch with 10. I wanted her to launch with 1. We compromised on 3. 3 as many as compromised. So the simple facts were this. We had more than 3 times as many downloads of episode 3 as we had of episode 1 and 2 combined.
Makes sense.
So it's just the stats. So there's the experience, but there's the reality. And she did, in her mailings, she did say that there's 3 episodes, grab them all, and get the idea of what's going ahead. And sometimes TV does that. Sometimes TV will launch a show and they'll do episode 1, episode 2, that type of thing. But in JJ's case, more than 3 times as many downloads of 3 as 1 and 2 combined, for whatever that's worth.
I've seen that, not quite to that extent, but anytime I see somebody that's like, hey, I just launched, I want to add my stuff to iTunes, and I'll go in and I'll see where they'll have 3 episodes, and I'll like flag it and like, okay, go back and look at them in a week. And it's always episode 3 is more than 1 and 2. And I'm amazed. I always thought like number 1 would just get like no downloads at all, but it does. People do go back and listen, but it's not as much as 3.
I will say that your 3rd episode is probably better than your 1st episode.
That's true. Yeah, I've heard people go extreme on this though. Like, don't launch until you have 30, and that's when I was like, oh, now come on.
Did those people launch? Because
his point was launch with 30, and then by that time you're good. And so when you get to episode 30,
well, then that point is delete episodes 1 through 29, and so you launch with 1 episode. 30 is number 1.
Yeah.
I love how Dan starts off this article because he says, you could call it a thought virus or podcasting's most enduring meme. If you like this show, remember to leave us a rating and review. It really helps. And he goes on to say, he goes on to show that Breaker, which is an app I'm not even aware of, and Castbox, another app that I don't really know that well, apparently do use their ratings and reviews as a way to chart shows. But when you're asking for ratings and reviews, are you really asking for ratings and reviews at Breaker? I think there's this implied idea that you're asking for ratings and reviews at iTunes, or Apple Podcasts, which I have to say, Apple needs to make this better. This is a bad process, and maybe that's part of the problem. Right, Chris? Have you ever tried to rate and review a show?
Yeah, it's awful. And it's especially if you're, we're podcast nerds who will spend the time obviously going and finding Dave's show and willing to help him out with a 4-star or 5 or whatever. But yeah, for the average listener, I remember when we launched the At U2 podcast, and these are diehard U2 fans who are will go to the wall for whatever fan, and they were just confused and asked. I had to send screenshots and movies and how to do it and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's definitely got to be easier if Apple wants to actually make use of that in some sort of social proof, the same way they do on the App Store, where your podcasts that have 4 or 5 stars will populate higher in search results, let's say, for than over other ones that maybe don't have or only have 2 or 1 stars. But I think where Breaker is interesting, I've heard a little bit about it on another podcast. And sort of the general idea, not necessarily specific to Breaker, but is social proof in I think you'd almost be better off going with hey, can you guys tweet about my show or write somewhere socially, write a blog post, whatever, about my show than the actual Apple Podcast rating or review, because it's easier for people generally they know how to tweet or they know how to write something on Facebook and share it with their friends. That to me seems like a better call to action of sorts than sending them to Apple Podcasts, where they'll just get lost and probably go find another person's show before they can rate yours.
Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
For a while on the desktop version, if you could go in, you could write a review, and then you'd find out that you weren't logged in. And when you logged in, you would then lose your review. Because I've gotten that ticket before. It's like my audience can't leave reviews. I'm like, they have to log in first. Yeah. And I haven't even tried on the app. I've always done it. I'm old school. I still, because I live in iTunes basically. So I haven't tried it on the app, but I know.
Dave, it's actually, if you want to send him swag, just send it to iTunes. He literally lives in iTunes. It's a small box on the web. Now, I'm not saying that ratings and reviews are they're not good. They're not important. Emily, what were you going to say?
I was just going to add to that joke because my mom she still doesn't know what I do. So she tells people I work at iPod.
Nice.
So.
Nice.
Sounds impressive.
Have her watch Alex Inc.
Yeah, how about not? Is that on? It's not in us Snarters. I don't. Yeah, we should talk about that.
For that one.
Yeah.
That is not on our list, but let's talk about it because this is the Roundtable, and I do not care. Because a lot of people here. So first of all, as anyone, I predicted the show would not. I mean, one season probably. We won't make it 2 seasons. I saw the previews and it just. But as they're coming out, I'm seeing a lot of things. It seems like a lot of cliche stuff and just a lot of. I think he's carrying around a high LPR 40.
Yes. I've watched all the episodes. It's a family-friendly comedy.
Mm-hmm. Okay, here's the problem of mass media. They have to appeal to everyone, right? Yeah. They don't just need the podcasters to watch and like it. I mean, if they were a podcast, that might be enough. Podcastersroundtable.com. But they need everyone to like it. So it has to be some generic show with a skin about podcasting, right?
Basically. But I think the thing is, we're watching it the same way doctors would watch ER or Grey's Anatomy.
Right.
And be like,
this is the first time I've ever felt like a doctor. This is amazing.
And you're like, you do not put a high LPR 40 in the middle of the table and just have your kids in the kitchen talk about it. No, you don't. Meanwhile, doctors are just like, that's not how you perform a tracheotomy. You don't. So it's kind of hard to judge it from a podcaster's perspective. I'm trying to watch it as just a show.
I just don't, and I don't know what it has to offer as just a show. Like, is it funny? Is it funny?
Elsie's kids thought it was hilarious. Yeah, okay. That's when I went, okay, that's.
You know what my kid watches? YouTube and Netflix. Turn on.
Yeah.
That's it. So it's, and I cannot get over the fact that the one guy was on The Sopranos. So the whole time I'm just waiting for him to like turn around and whack somebody. So I cannot not see that guy in the.
Who's podcasting from a coffee shop? Who's in the background? That's Emily's husband.
No.
Oh, Paul, are you in a coffee shop?
No, we've just got some issues next door. Yeah,
okay,
cool. We'll get that fixed.
I'm
muting out when I can.
No, it's totally cool.
He's got The Sopranos next door.
Anyways, so yeah, well, this should be a fun video to watch. Anyways, yeah, I have not seen an episode, so I'm guilty of that. I have seen WTF, which is the other show that's based around podcasting. Now that I feel like, it's not called WTF. What's it called?
Marin.
Marin, yeah. That one I felt has more success, and I think it has seen success. I don't know if it's still on the air or not.
No, he's got other shows he's moved on to, and the one guy that was on it is now on Silicon Valley and blah, blah, blah.
Good show.
But there's some great scenes in there. One of my favorite scenes is where he's being interviewed by like a morning radio show, and they were kind of like, hey, podcasting's this little fun little toy you play with. And he's like, aren't you guys like doing fart jokes? Like, seriously? You're going to make fun of my podcast? It's an awesome scene.
Nice. All right. Well, anyways, ratings and reviews. I don't know if it's the best way to spend your call to action. That's what I'm actually most curious about. You have a call to action. I don't know how many you can make before people just turn you off. Maybe you have one. What's the most important one? Is ratings and review it? I don't know. Paul, do you think that's where you'd spend your call to action?
No.
Yeah. So do you think it's worth getting ratings and reviews?
I think ratings and reviews are going to come naturally.
You do.
And I think it's something that you can ask for an email, maybe ask for on your website, but it's not right for the show.
I think maybe we had you on like a call to action. What would be your call to action if you had one to spin?
Email list.
Yeah.
Email list. That's the call to action.
Yeah. It's amazing how that has endured, right? I mean, the email list just won't go away. Like it's still the way to get, and maybe the best way to get in touch with your audience. I don't know. Anyone else have a better call? Anyone else like to have a different call to action? What would you rather people do for your podcast?
I have people join my Facebook group because I can talk to them. I can go live. I can tell them updates with the show. Do you then try to move those people? It always worries me to build on a third party, right? Where they could shut you off. Right. Do you try to get people on email list after that? Well, that's the thing with my show. It's a history show, and I'm not really using it for my business. But at this point, I have a book deal because of my podcast. And so now they're just like, oh, do you have an email list? I'm like, no, but I have a Facebook group. They're like, can you get an email list going? So I kind of had to put that call to action in. And that's the other thing is I don't really put that in my show as much because I know what people are doing when they're listening to the show, they're driving,
Right,
they're going
right.
to the grocery store, they're
Yeah.
walking their dog, they're doing their dishes. They're not going to sit there at the computer and say, "Oh, I really want to join this email list." So it's more, I'd rather get them, "Hey, I have show notes. Go to my website to get the show notes to learn more about what I'm talking about. Also on my website, there's a way to sign up for my email list or join my Facebook group." So the show notes are super, super important for that sort of stuff, because I know as a listener, I go back and I will click on the links in people's show notes.
I've
Very
never
cool.
looked at the, are there any kind of metrics for a Facebook group? Because the nice thing about an email
Yeah.
list,
Yeah.
you can see like who is and isn't clicking and things like that. So you can kind of
Mhm.
see how engaged your email list is. And
Yeah. With a Facebook group, you can see not only how many people join, they do give you metrics of as far as age and how active people are. They actually give you a list. I did this once in my Facebook group of, hey, if anybody, if anybody guesses the number one active person in this Facebook group, both you and that person get stickers. And, people were just like, "Oh my God, am I number one?" I'm like, "No, you're number two." And they're like, "Next time."
I love calling people number 2. No, you are number 2.
Yeah.
Chris is definitely the number 2 on this show for sure. For sure. So that's what you get. That's new Roundtabler hazing,
Right.
Chris. That's what that is. Nothing personal at all.
And because you hate Canada.
I hate Canada. Who doesn't? Canadians are the meanest people I've ever met.
They're not
Sorry.
like us.
Sorry about that.
So you see that? You get the joke there? That was funny. I like that. All right. All the funniest Americans are actually Canadians, if you don't know that.
It's
That's
very
always the joke at the Academy Awards. You're like, they're Canadian? What? Okay, I never knew. All right. Well, anyways, hey, by the way, Emily's audio is awesome. You hear that? And she's using an ATR 2100. Just saying. All right.
Yeah, ATR 2100 and moving blankets.
And
These
the key,
curtains
then
and lights.
that is the key to your sound right now, because what I'm hearing is a beautifully treated room and it's moving blankets. I love it.
Yeah, moving blankets.
All right.
It's the
Speaking of
curtain.
moving, I'm sorry, Emily. We haven't moved on. This might be the problem with this format, but I like it anyways because it's a lot of fun. Let's go. Who wants to go next? Give me a story. Do you guys have your own stories? Because I have them here. If you don't have, let me see. I could pick one that's interesting. This Pandora CEO is doubling down on podcasts because that makes me almost laugh. That's
Why does that make
balls.
you laugh?
Because
why does that make you laugh?
well, because they're doubling down on something I didn't even know they're involved in.
Oh, okay. Okay. So I've got a screenshot here of the article, just having fun with the camera software. But a couple things to think about stat wise. Okay. 83. This is all from Infinite Dial. 83% of the country has a smartphone. Okay. Statistically speaking, they have a smartphone, which makes all the podcasters get wacky because if they have a smartphone, they should be listening to my show. 64% of them do online audio. So right now we've got about 20% of the country, 1 out of every 5 people have a smartphone and they're not doing anything smart with it. But what's really important is 85% of the population has an awareness of Pandora. 85%. iHeart, 67%. Spotify, 65%. Podcasting, 64%. More people who go to the internet for audio know about Pandora than podcasting by about 20%. Okay, we've seen some interesting things happen to some interesting podcasts by getting on Spotify, and they're about the same rate we are. When Pandora introduces podcasting, we're going to be a good place. There's a new place for us. Now, think about Pandora. Pandora has a choice: either pay to play Britney Spears or Katy Perry or whatever the kids are listening to these days, or grab Dave for free. Or grab Paul for free. So we've got an audience that is going to Pandora for internet audio that's bigger than our existing audience, and Pandora has a reason to send them our stuff. Think about it.
Here's what I really love. Yes, being in a new place that is popular, awesome. I love it. Distribution rocks. Get me on as many places as you want. It's more chance for people to find my stuff. Here's what I don't care about it. Here's what bugs me. The last paragraph of this article, he says, there's nothing personal with that stuff, Lynch explains. It's just what everyone else does. That's what music was. You know what to look at on the Billboard chart. Okay, what's popular? And then Pandora came out and said, we need discovery. For music, that works great. The skip button, my favorite thing. I listen to Pandora all the time because guess what? I can tell if I want to hear a song in the first 10 seconds. Not so much with a podcast. He says that hasn't happened yet in podcasts, but we're going to make it happen. He's going to solve discovery, Dave. But anyways, if you think there's a problem with discovery, that's a whole other system. But he wants to do, well, the CEO wants to do for podcasts what they did for music, and I just don't think they work the same. I don't think people come to browse podcasts in 5-second increments the way you do music.
But everybody who knows that they want to listen to Dave is listening to Dave. People who want to listen to podcasts about podcasts don't know about Dave. So just like you go to Pandora and say, I want 80s music, or you go to Pandora and say, I want country music, you can say, I want shows about X. And I'll tell you, there are a lot of shows that I can tell aren't for me in the first 5 seconds. It's just not that hard. And as podcasters, we should be doing a better story. Right now, we have these 3-minute intros, and we have these, if we're Tim Ferriss, we have 6 minutes of commercials about, about our sponsors. If we can hook our audience in the first 5 seconds, which some of us do a lot better than others, we will get people to give us the thumbs up. And so we've always been asking, who's going to bring us an audience? Pandora's has got the option. And it's really, really exciting. And I know it's really cool to say that the discovery problem, doesn't need fixing. Well, for us, it doesn't need fixing. But for the average person who doesn't know where to start, the same one who goes, give me some 80s music, give me somebody who sounds like Cher, and give me some country and Western, they're going to say, I want podcast about you too. Now it's Chris's chance to prove that it's a good show.
Wait a minute. You know Chris very well, apparently.
He's paying attention.
He is paying attention to the YouTube podcast.
But
anyone else?
That's what I'll be interested to see, because what they do is they go in and say, okay, you like this song. It had a thumping bass, 2 guitars, and a singer who can sing higher than dogs can hear.
I will say they are so good at knowing what I want to hear. That I will say.
So
algorithm rocks.
So I'm not sure how you set up an algorithm that goes, this guy's talking about, chameleon breeding.
Well, it's got to be in the description you submit.
Thumbs up, thumbs down.
Yeah, that's true.
People who, you take a guy like me, I've subscribed to Dave, and I've also subscribed to X. So they're going to compare people with Dave and people with X. And then if I go, this show is so freaking boring, and I click the down button, and it's the thumbs up, it's the thumbs down, and it's going to be the, okay, Alexa, skip this show, just like we're doing with Pandora all the time.
Yeah.
So
I'm convinced it. Look, iTunes did this the best. They've always did this the best. When they showed you other shows that people were listening to, when they listened to this show, I could glance at the artwork and the title and know. Oftentimes I'm like, yes, I want to check out that show, but I'm not going to check it out now. Like I'm going to, a lot of times I would subscribe and check it out later. It's a harder ask for me in a skip audio, in an audio format. It may work. I have no idea. I'm not against it at all. I just think Pandora has been talking about podcasts for a long time. We've been waiting for it. As us in this community, I haven't seen it really implemented. I haven't seen them do anything with it, but they probably have the luxury of coming in whenever they want and still dominating, right? Spotify had this luxury. Not only did I would say that they botch podcasting when they first brought it in, they were terrible. Like you heard that it exists, you couldn't find it. They weren't letting anyone on, but it doesn't matter because they're so big that once they find their place, they still have enough people built in to come and consume it and make it successful. So I don't know. I don't even know if I'd consider it successful yet on Spotify. For some people, yes. But again, distribution, if people are consuming audio there, I want to be there.
Yeah. Let me clarify. I'm excited that they're coming on board. It's about time. It'd be great if they could, go over and knock on the door and bring Google with them and maybe get Microsoft involved. That would be cool. But I'll just be interested. I'm really interested to see how they're going to do this thing, because I just know how they approached it from a music standpoint. I'm really interested to see how they're going to do that on a podcast, but I'm excited.
Chris, do you get Spotify in Canada? Like I know it's just like so far out.
No, actually, that's what I was
called
just
Spotify up there. It's called Spotify. Yeah,
we have Spotify, but Pandora is not available in Canada at all. They have a restricted to the U.S. only.
That's what I meant. Are you serious? See, I was actually joking.
No.
Wow.
Because music licensing outside, it's all a mess.
It is a mess.
What I was going to say, though, with Pandora is, and probably Spotify, too, I'm not subscribers of either, but they do have seemingly where Apple doesn't really care if you listen to more podcasts. They just want you to, obviously, you buy more devices. Pandora, Spotify, it's in their interest to get you back on their platform. And so I would guess that they'll be, I don't know, you guys are on Spotify or Pandora. Do they send you emails outside of the app where it's like, hey, you listen to U2, you might want to listen to this person? And could they not do that as well with podcasts, I guess, where they're reaching you outside of the actual app itself with, hey, you listen to Dave's show, you probably like Paul's thing, that kind of idea, and pulling, all the metadata, obviously, that we're handing over to Apple Podcasts is available to Pandora as well. And so they know the genres, they know the text that we're throwing in, they're probably doing a little bit of audio sampling and all that kind of stuff, and figuring out what you're talking about, even if you're not telling them very well in the description, and combining all that in some sort of crazy algorithm soup to know that you might like this other show, in addition to the thumbs up, thumbs down thing, I guess, on Pandora or the app. But you're shaking your head, Ray. They don't do any sort of outside.
Well, I may have turned it off. I mean, you're definitely I do free version, so I get ads, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I don't know you guys. I don't recall getting emails.
I fell into one because I'm always looking at the concerts to see who's in town. And somehow it was like, I ended up on an email list called Bands in Town. And so they'll say, here's who's in your town. And I've actually gone to a couple concerts because of that. That's why I'm still subscribed to it.
Nice.
But it was something in Spotify at one point. I was looking at somebody's calendar and it was like, blah, 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 bands in town. I was like, what is this? And I clicked on it. It was like, oh, subscribe. I think I might have bought tickets to a concert. And in the process of that, ended up on bands in town. So, but I've seen some cool concerts. The other thing about Pandora is, didn't they just spend like a bunch of change on AdWiz or something like that? Wasn't that Pandora that bought?
I'm sure
it was in that article. Paul, wasn't it down like next to the second to the last paragraph at the bottom or something? I thought I saw where they had just bought a big, because that was half the thing. They doubled down on advertising, blah blah blah, and I thought it was AdWiz because I remember thinking it came in like a big giant orange can and you shook it up and sprayed
AdWiz
on your eyes. Yeah. Oh man. All right. Well, anyone else? I mean, Emily, are you excited about Pandora doubling down on podcasts?
I wasn't excited about Spotify. I really didn't think that would be as big as it was, but I remember Rob Walsh on the feed saying it's something like 10% of downloads now come from Spotify. And
it's like number 2, but isn't that a low bar? Like, I feel like that's always been a low bar. It's a lot of people. Don't get me wrong. It's a lot of people.
Yeah. I'll still take that 10% who maybe weren't listening to podcasts before.
Well, I mean, because look, no one stepped into that number 2 spot, right? I mean, Stitcher was there for a while. I mean, Microsoft could have owned it if they'd stuck with it. Google should own it. Google should be number 2, hands down. It should not even be a competition. It feels like they're not. There's the number 2 feels like it's just been wide open for anyone to take. Stitcher kind of fell off. Do we know why Stitcher fell off? Anyone? Why did people? Is it because they force ads in your content that you don't ask for?
They did that. Didn't they also used to take your files and make them all kind of wonky and low quality?
They did, but I'm sure that only matters mostly to us. I mean, I used to rail against that because for several reasons, but I always also said that if people are listening on Stitcher, they don't care, right? They would, otherwise they'd go somewhere else. But I don't know, Paul, I mean, why do you think people migrate away? Is it better apps? I mean, is it because Stitcher was probably the easiest way to get podcasts on an Android for, I feel like, quite a long time, and then Overcast came along, or Pocket Cast, or there's other options now? Theories?
Stitcher is just meh. There's no passion there. There's no there's no desire to serve the audience. They're a bunch of people looking for a business plan, and we'll re-encode, we'll try ads, we'll do this, we'll do that. And
even though Midroll took it over, and I feel like Midroll is great at understanding podcast audiences, but I'm not sure that it's the same. It's a different division.
I don't think it's the smart people at Midroll that are in the Stitcher building right now. Now the Stitcher people are smarter than the Google people, and they're smarter, trust me, than another company that I'm not allowed to talk about. But so Stitcher is, it's sort of like a, other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how did you like the play kind of situation. but there are some opportunities here for someone to do really, really, really well.
Yeah, I know. Like Corey Finneran had a huge audience for whatever reason with Ivy Envy on Stitcher, and then it just quit working. There were times when it'd be like, his feed was valid, everything was fine, it just wouldn't update in Stitcher. So I think there may be some cases where people are like, they didn't promote it as much as they used to, and then it's like you said, when Pocket Cast comes out and these other alternatives. And I did see in the article that Pandora purchased AdWiz with 2 Z's, because it's cooler that way, for $145 million earlier this year. So So they're all set up to throw ads at us even more, which I was like, okay, because I listen to Pandora on occasion. If I want to do the lean back, I will throw on Pandora and throw on my 80s metal, and I'm happy.
Nothing wrong with that.
Gabe in the chat says he can't stand Pandora because they interrupt the music way too much with advertisements, which I agree. And actually, it's more than it used to be, but you got to pay. Like if it bugs you that much, then it's time to pay. Like I've almost paid so many times, but I'll deal with the ads.
Before there was Overcast, I used to use Stitcher because I love the fact that I could go on my computer at home. I could go on my phone and pick up where I left off. What drove me off of Stitcher is they started it used to be in between episodes they would put ad. Then they started every time I hit pause. When I would unpause, I would put an ad, and I'm like, all right, deal breaker, done. And that's when I found Overcast, and you're going to have to pry Overcast out of my cold dead hands at this point.
That'll make Mark Arment very happy.
Yeah. I mean, he does. I mean, it's my wife uses that. It's good tech. I was already a huge fan of Pocket Cast, but anyways, we won't go down. Everyone loves apps. They love their cell phone companies and banks, and everyone's got a different opinion.
Yeah.
Let's find another story. Because it's clear in this format, I'm going to have people pick one story. Because
one
getting
story
through two
each,
stories. Yeah. I love it. We just do a 2-hour show is what I say, but whatever.
I'm game.
What do we got? That was Paul's. Emily, I'm curious about one of Emily's stories here. It says, is it possible to game Apple Podcast charts?
Yeah, that was a really interesting story that I saw a few months ago, and then I finally read it tonight. And this person was tracking one particular podcast that was always at the top of the charts, and it was like, well, how is this possible? And then first they looked at their Twitter account
because it's not a podcast that typically.
Yeah, it's not.
You're like, what's the reason? It's called Kick-Ass News. Like, it's not a major brand. It's not a Pod Save America. Come on, let's
I know.
It.
It's not, so they tracked it. First, they looked at their Twitter account and kind of analyzed if there were any fake followers on there, and they found 22%. And then they were looking through all the rest of the data to kind of track them and wondering if there was a click farm at work. And I mean, we're all in, for the most part, Facebook podcasting groups, and we've probably started getting the spam. This became really popular the past few weeks, is getting the spam from people on Fiverr saying, I will get you to the top of the iTunes charts and stuff. And you realize these people, like, is it a click farm? What's going on here? And I feel bad for the new podcasters starting out. That's like, oh yeah, I will totally pay $5 to this person for either a click farm or it's just absolutely a scam. And they have to realize that it's subscriptions. And do you really want all these subscriptions to get you to the charts, to the top of the charts, if no one's actually subscribing, if no one's actually listening to your show, they're just hitting subscribe in a click farm.
So, Paul, were you in on the original game Apple Podcast charts with Rob Walsh? Remember that?
Yes.
You? Okay.
Yes.
You guys did it, right?
Yes.
And isn't the algorithm is it still the same? What was the secret?
It subscribes.
Yeah.
It subscribes over a 24-hour time period is some significant part of your score.
Right. So podcast. I mean, I feel like Apple Podcasts, they only care. We hit on ratings reviews. They only care about subscriptions mostly, right?
Yeah. Well,
Paul's. If you're not watching on video, Paul's staring at the ceiling. It feels like he's determining what he can and can't say, but he knows it. He knows it.
Well, Paul made a good point on his show, the podcast report, about when subscribers, what do? That brings you back to your phone. Like Apple wants you to use their phone. And when you subscribe, you go back to the phone. And I was like, that was a really good point.
I have seen a show stats that have climbed up the charts ridiculously with absolutely zero additional downloads. Okay. The only option, well, there are two options. This show either could have had a bunch of ratings and reviews because it really helps you in iTunes, or there was an automated system that subscribed people without even downloading.
Right.
And if you think about the idea of click farms, downloading actually takes time. Clicking subscribe doesn't. So a click farm would actually make more sense. I do not condone, I do not recommend, I do not participate in this process. I've been looking at some stats and some information. I can tell you, I used to sell climbing up the charts. That used to be one of our big things, is we help you get a campaign, we help you run up the charts legitimately. And two things: A, it's a lot cheaper to do it other ways now than to do it legitimately, and B, it just has no impact. It just has no impact.
Wait, you're saying being at the top of the charts has no impact?
Yeah,
that's huge. Okay, why does it matter? I mean, it's got to get you something, right? Why is everyone clamoring for it? Is it because just you want to win the trophy and be at the top?
Yes,
or do these people think that it's going to bring them?
I think they think. I had a guy who has purchased everybody's course. He's a member of the School of Podcasting. He's a member of Paradise. He's a member of all these things. He told me today that, but if we do that with 8 episodes, I can't launch with the 10. Like that was a statement of fact. I had a gal once post on my Facebook page saying, "What do you do if you have a hard time getting interviews for your show?" I suggested, "Don't have an interview show." Her response was literally, "I kid you not, is that allowed?" I think in some people's parlance, we have these thoughts of what's happening. Now, there are a lot of really dumb advertisers out there who don't know what they're buying. And someone who's number 10 in category X is worth more than someone who's number 100 in category X when you don't know what you're buying. And that's back to the old, what was it, Twitter bombing days?
Yeah.
When it was just downloads. Twitter bombing, of course, because it's downloads. The only thing it rips off is Libsyn. It doesn't go through the iTunes system at all. But if all you're tracking is downloads, that you can do. So I think it's a bunch of very misinformed people with some stuff. I believe Apple has to change the game. New and Noteworthy's dead.
Yeah,
that's what I'm going to ask you, Emily. Is there anything in this article I didn't get a chance to read about how does Apple fight against this? Or first of all, what did this article say? Did he find out this is what's going on? It's just subscribe.
It's
going on.
Speculation. It's a lot.
It's going on.
Yeah. And what is Apple? Does it say anything that Apple's doing? Can they do anything?
Would you like my?
Yeah, but I mean, it still seems like subscribes are a great way to tell if a podcast is popular, but I don't know. For Emily, do you have any thoughts?
I mean, at the very end of the article, it's like, well, how much harm is this really doing? It's victimless. But the thing is, it's victimizing other podcasters. And because of something like this, the same thing when people used to stuff their author tags and their show titles, is Apple was like, oh, you're doing this? No, we're going to penalize all of you. We're not, if you do that,
it's the army, right? We're all doing push-ups and you're being the jackal getting us all push-ups. Paul, you have solutions?
Well, so Amazon used to be gamed in the Kindle world by accounts doing the Kindle Unlimited stuff. Amazon changed the game to where now it's pages read, not acquisitions of your book. Okay?
Pages read, yeah.
Pages read. Apple has now started to track how long people consume a podcast, which is the podcast conversion of pages read. I believe that it's going to change very soon to consumption. There's going to be some sort of consumption percentage. Obviously,
YouTube. It's a YouTube model, right? What counts at YouTube? How long do people watch?
Exactly. It's where everybody else is. It's where Apple has to.
And now we know that Apple tracks this.
Yeah.
Which we already knew that, but they're giving it to us.
Yeah.
And of course, if every system, someone will game that too.
Yeah, I was going to say.
But it's just, how do you combat the?
But the thing is, it takes a lot more money to run. The thing is, I mean, Emily, you pointed out here that it's Fiverr that's doing this. Okay, it's $5 to rank the system to get 5,000 machines playing an hour of the podcast. That's actually going to take some money and take some time. So at least people aren't going to be able to game for $5.
Yeah, and I mean, you could be mining crypto for that kind of time.
Exactly. Yeah, and make more money in mining crypto. So
maybe.
So it's going to be consumption. And the other thing that Apple can do, and it's not that complicated. And Apple, call me, is you can simply only chart accounts with credit card numbers, because no click farm is going to generate 5,000 credit cards, and everybody, it's the accounts without the credit card numbers that everybody's playing on right now. So if you track consumption for people with credit card accounts, that's going to be pretty hard to hack.
Sweet. So help is coming. I like it. All right, let's move on because time is ticking. It's lightning round. No, we don't have one of those. We don't have one of those. We might need to get one. See, I can tell this is too much fun for me. I love just bringing stuff up and talking about it. That was the whole concept of the roundtable in the beginning, and then I steered towards topics. But you guys are going to let us know if you really do enjoy the more focused one topic thing. Let us know, and then we'll factor it in. We don't know that that's what we'll go.
It's Ray's algorithm.
It's a Ray's algorithm. It's super gameable. Super gameable. Just send beer. Chris, the infinite dial in Canada. No one cares about that. No, I'm kidding. I thought this was cool. Because the infinite dial, for the first time, we're familiar with this research in the U.S. They do. They've been the longest running research on podcast consumption, right? But now they're doing it for Canada.
Yeah, and as you'd expect, we're similar. We're not all that different, obviously, being as close as we are.
That's what you think. Yeah.
But with a few,
you do put mayonnaise on your French fries, so
why would you not? I don't understand. But
they have poutine, okay? They win.
Yeah,
they don't have Trump, so I'm going to be there soon. Word.
There goes your algorithm. Similar stuff in terms of results as you'd expect, but we don't have access, or we only recently got access to Amazon's smart devices, the Echoes, etc., whereas Google Home was around for longer and all that kind of thing. So minor differences aside, I guess the big one to me that has been growing, at least in interest from people that I've talked with in the podcasting space, is the smart speaker stuff. And I don't know what it's like in your guys' your various worlds, but like in mine, I feel like I don't know if you can hear my kids playing hockey right outside the door here, because we're Canadian, obviously they're playing hockey.
Of course, yeah.
Such a cliche.
I'm living
that is fantastic. Are they listening to Rush while they're doing it? That's my...
Wait, Rush is Canadian? See, there you go.
Oh, come on, Brian Adams.
It's a joke.
Actually, so. But anyways, it's still a newer, I guess, new to Canada in terms of availability and all that kind of stuff. And so it isn't as popular, I would say. And but it's certainly an area of interest. Whereas in the States, they've been around longer. You've had access to them for longer. Is the podcasting world kind of really interested in this? And is there actually a sense in like pushing into this area, or is it kind of like, because for me, I bristle at the idea of like having a speaker because as soon as I leave the room, that speaker's sitting here in my office, and whereas my phone comes with me, I can take it to the car, or take it with headphones, whatever I'm doing. That is more mobile to me, but that's just my own personal preference. So I'm just curious with your shows where you're at with sort of recommending, or are people listening on smart speakers?
Paul is really into the smart speaker thing. I think he did a talk recently on smart speakers. I've always been, here's my theory, is that podcasting is not a shared experience, right? We listen, it's very personalized. Don't get me wrong. It doesn't mean that a lot of people don't live alone and they play the speaker. I don't know. Again, it's distribution. Like, I don't want to block anyone from getting my stuff the way they want to get it, right?
Yeah.
So, and is that it, Paul? I mean,
yeah.
what do you see with
smart speakers? Saw more market penetration in 1 year than podcasting saw in its first 14
They have
years.
the advantage of being way
financed by Google and Amazon. Yeah,
right.
but take what, if Google wants to spend $1 gajillion to promote something that plays my podcast, I thought it would have been their app. Silly me. But if Amazon wants to spend $1 gajillion to get someone to play my podcast, I'm going to be behind that. Anybody who spends crazy money making it easier to consume my show, I want to get fully and completely behind.
Yeah, there was a study that came out that said by the end of the year, 90 million people will have a smart device just for this year. And of those, it was 28% said they're going to listen, that already have a smart speaker, listen to more podcasts. So when you take 28% times 90 million, it's 27 million people are listening to more podcasts because of a smart speaker.
89 million people have a treadmill. 28% say they're going to use it for a week. 1% use it. I'm just...
I will say this, and this is a mistake I see a lot of people making. They'll make their podcast a flash briefing. And a flash briefing is the key word there is brief.
Yeah.
So it should be, I hear the weather, or I have Alexa tell me something new that you can do with her. And what happens is when you put your whole podcast there and you got, there are 30 episodes that you just launched with, when I go next, because I don't want to listen to you, it takes me to your next episode. And I go, what? Hey, what's her name? Next. And it goes to your next episode. And the first thing I do when I grab my phone is get you out of my flash briefing. Your flash briefing should have one episode.
Dave, do you have a show about the
I do.
ALEX?
Yes.
No, Dave can't say it, otherwise he'll have problems inside his
Right.
studio.
Well, I can mute her.
Yeah.
There we go. The Alexa cast. Yeah, but it's I've found that a couple times. You can make a skill for your podcast.
All this
That's
jargon.
it.
I mean, this
I know.
Listen.
Well, skill is an Amazon app, basically.
Kids today.
So confused.
From a purely circumstantial standpoint, I submitted to Movement my follow-up to this one, smart speakers 1 year in, and they weren't interested. So maybe yeah.
Who knows?
So who knows?
We don't know that algorithm either. So we love the movement. We're talking about podcast movement. Everyone should go. I definitely have fun. I mean, was everyone at the last one? Chris, are you going to think? Chris, have you ever been compelled to leave your borders there and go to a U.S.-based podcasting conference?
I don't want to get too political, so I haven't. There actually, I was going to mention for folks who are in Canada, there is Pod Summit.
Pod Summit, yes,
is coming up.
Definitely,
Month, so
definitely check it out.
It's only a 5-hour drive from where I am, so that's a little more attainable. But
are you going?
Not yet.
You should be speaking.
But
I could hook you up. I could make that happen.
All right. You can wave your wand and I'll be speaking.
It might. Yeah. I have connections. No, I don't know. Great people at Pod Summit. Did we not get to one story from everyone? I don't think we got to one from Dave.
No.
Dave, do you want to pick from your two?
I will pick, yes, because I can do this one really quick. And that is,
Sure.
I just found
Challenge accepted, buddy.
Exactly. Radio Public, you can make money with your podcast. Now, I will give them credit. They'd say it right up front. It's $20 CPM. And they even have a cool little tool where you can go over and see how much money you'll make. And the fun part is you have to send them an absolutely ad-free episode. So they say if you have ads in it, you need to re-record it, put it on another host, and give us that RSS feed. But my favorite thing about this is you don't pay them anything from what I can see. They just pay you. And I'm like, really?
You're paying them with free content.
You're paying them with free. But there's this other little company, you may have heard of it, called CBS Radio, that is shutting down their podcast division because they got in it to, sell ads against this stuff. Free hosting, I'm assuming. I'm not sure if Danny Pena was paying for stuff over there or not, but, they took a cut of the advertising and it didn't, at least for them.
Oh, wait, what's the network called?
Play It.
They're shutting that down? I didn't hear that.
Yeah, Danny Pena.
Right.
Well, I heard about it from somebody and then Rob checked into it and sure enough.
Yeah, it's going down.
They're shutting it down because they couldn't get enough ad revenue out of podcasts? Is that what the problem is?
I'm assuming.
That's their only value?
They never had ad revenue. They ran out of money.
Yeah. And so here's another company doing that along with, there's a bunch that are just like
the Radio Public thing. I mean, so
that's another one.
Some of the great podcasts are going to make $20. Like,
well, that's my whole thing.
CPM is not a good model for most podcasters.
Yeah. So I did that and I took my weekly web tool show and I think I would make $34 by the end of the year. Nice. And that's when I went
the year.
And I was like, excellent. So I just saw that, and because there are a lot of things, there are a lot of new companies now that are doing this, that, you're getting your 0.000. Don't forget the third zero. 2 cents a download in some cases. What is $20 per 1,000 is.
Do you even get paid if you don't hit 1,000?
You have to get $25 before
they pay out. But I'm saying, like, if your episode
$30 check writing fee.
If your episode, if your episode hits 500 downloads in 2 weeks, do you have to hit the CPM in a certain amount of time, or is it just whenever this episode hits?
I don't know, and I don't know if it's cumulative. Like, if you had multiple podcasts, can you tie them all together into one check, or is it only one check per podcast? But
don't do it.
Yeah, exactly. $20 per 1,000 downloads is 2 cents. And I've seen other companies, Nest, that pay you 0.000 2 cents.
Like I said, I think the real thing here is that CPM is just not a generally
It's
good
not. It
model
doesn't
for-
work. But just when I saw that, I just thought, hey, let's take another 10 seconds to say CPM doesn't work for people.
For most people. I mean, we peddle niche, and it's not like doesn't often speak to, you know, I don't know. I mean, making money's should be secondary anyways, but anyways, I don't know. I don't know where to go with that other than we could dive down a whole hole about CPMs versus other ways to make money.
Right. Just go to Fiverr and offer to listen to other people's podcasts, and you'll make more money probably.
Shh, it's how I'm making all my cash here. Shut up. Oh, we could do another story because I mean, you know, I'm saying that we go 2 hours, we've barely hit an hour. So, Dave's other story's trash. Let's see what else we got. I'm just kidding.
I'm still doing my percentage on Radio Public. I think I would make less than Dave. It's not even, no, not worth it. Then it has a comparison chart of see how it compares to pre-roll, mid-roll, post-roll on your own.
Oh yeah.
That's interesting.
Emily, you have a related story. It says the rise of voice technology means new opportunities for podcasting. Since it's related, what's that about?
Yeah, I have to double check.
The rise of voice technology means the new opportunity. I mean, so I don't know, Paul, that must spark some stuff there. Voice technology. That's Alexa. That's Google.
No, this was actually more, I believe it was finding people to read your podcast for you.
Oh, wow. This is weird.
Yeah.
Audiobook. Those are called audiobooks.
Turns written text into a voice product.
Yeah, there's an Amazon product right now that they keep pushing, and every day some smart aleck who has yet to launch their podcast says, you know, well, I could just have a podcast that was this reading my blog.
Oh yeah.
You know, and
repurpose content for the win.
It's terrible.
Well, it says each piece is read by a real person. We looked at text to speech, but it was robotic.
Right. So this is going to be hugely lucrative for them because every new podcaster hates their own voice, right? So before you even launch your 10 episodes, your 37 episodes, you're gonna be like, I hate my voice. Let have someone else read it, and it'll land with nobody because it's coming through basically a third party.
But I mean, that's the whole thing with podcasting is like people connect with the host. I listen to shows where the hosts are like, you know, I hate the sound of my own voice. I have a voice for writing, you know, and I'm like, no, I don't care if you have a terrible voice. If I connect with you, what you're saying, how you're saying it, if you make me laugh, I'm not going to.
And that's the whole reason that my audio, probably Dave's at some point, Chris's, it was all muddy. It's all garbage in the beginning because we're all like cranking up the bass and we're like, I want to sound like the radio. You know what I mean? Like, because that's as a podcaster, that's just a rite of passage. You got to get over your own voice, get past that, and realize that a lot of people are showing up to podcasts because they're looking for an alternative to the thing you think you're supposed to be putting out there because you grew up on traditional media, right?
Yeah. When I hear a real voice, I can connect with them more.
Dave, this goes to your story because Mr. JLD actually said this in his MSNBC interview that you linked me to, that he was talking about how, you know, he leaves all the ums and ahs and sneezes. He leaves everything in there because that's real and authentic and that's what connects with the audience. I wouldn't go that far, but that's fine. What was he saying in that
the thing that I loved, I was watching it and just the fact that it was JLD on whatever it is, MSNBC, some business show.
Were they at Social Media Marketing World?
That's what I was trying to figure out what it was.
Like I think it was NAB. Wasn't it NAB?
Oh, that makes more sense. Yeah.
And they asked him, like, you know, what kind of money can you make? And he said, look, you're looking at 3 to 5 years. He's like, so when you start your podcast, you better be ready. He goes, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And I was like, hallelujah. But then again, it's like we're talking earlier about, you know, I've got to get ratings and reviews. It's like there's one person that said it that a lot of people follow. And I swear that a lot of people, when they hear that, they go, well, not for me. I'm going to be the exception or something. I don't know. Just because I've really been trying to I've always been saying that it takes a while to build an audience and you monetize your audience. But I saw that and it was like, yes, okay, please, everyone, see what he said. Now I'm going to take that clip down and say, if you don't believe me, believe this guy.
I mean, part of me, that's the beauty of content creation. Like anyone who gets into content creation just in general, not even podcasting, knows that it's a long slug. You got to be here a long time. I mean, why would you get popular if you put out 5 things? I mean, yeah, could you do a viral video on YouTube? Sure, once, and people watch it once and they never come back. I mean, it's a long time investment. You can't build up a great catalog of content without doing things for a long time. So, and I do like that he put that out there publicly. I mean, but you know, being hard, being consistent, having to be patient, all the stuff that Gary Vee, all these guys talk about, that we talk about, it weeds out people who aren't here for the right reasons. So I don't have a problem with that. But you know, the beauty of our medium is that it's open for anyone to try. You think you're going to be the next one? Good. Give it a shot. See what happens. And if it's not what you thought it was, then you'll leave. But anyone can try, right?
Yeah. Jessica Rhodes had a great Facebook post where she said, what do you say to a new podcaster that is thinking of quitting because they're not getting enough ROI and they're really just fresh out of the gate? And most of the people in that group said quit.
If they used the letters ROI in their question,
yeah,
then that's all I need to know.
And that's where a lot of people in that group said, "No, forget it. You're in the wrong spot."
Paul
I'm going to be the dissenter here.
Good.
So client recent launch, ROI from day one, but realizes that there's going to be some time, there's going to be some effort, there's going to be some money spent on audience building, there's going to be some money spent on production, there's going to be some money on stuff, but is going into it from ROI from day one. And trust you me this, if anybody over at you know, your friends that you've been touring the country with, you know, they're looking at ROI, and you know, the makers of other things than Alex Inc., you know, those guys are looking at ROI for their new shows. So it's okay to do if it's a spreadsheet that is reflective of reality.
Yes, there we go.
I remember 10 years ago, you know, when we were doing websites for people, you know, I'd ask, oh, how are you going to advertise this website? And they would look at me with all conviction and all belief, oh, we're just going to go viral. Like that was a marketing plan, you know. And I think so many podcasters think, oh, I'm just going to go viral, you know, you know, or you know, I'm going to, you know, I love that tomorrow's JLD's 2000th episode, you know, and, you know, I love people. Well, you know, I was on Entrepreneurs on Fire. How can I not be popular? Well, you know, there's 2000 episodes. It's not, you know, and again, love John, love what he's done. And it's funny what John says versus what other people hear. I think is the most interesting.
He does say most of the right things.
Yeah.
He does have his head in the right place.
Yeah, he does wrap it in a sales wrapper that enables him to make the money he's making.
It's his niche.
So I think ROI is fine if the spreadsheet is based on reality.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, ROI is good if the spreadsheet, and many times the spreadsheet is, if you don't have the money for production, you don't have the money for marketing, you don't have the money for this, this, and this, then it's a 3 to 5 year run. And
exactly. And it's very different. I mean, you're talking to a lot of people that came into this with no audience, no email list. They weren't known. Right. And so you probably have a client who actually has a significant place to already put it out there, and the ROI is going to be much different, and the return is going to be, it's just going to be much different. So yeah, you can't paint with a broad brush, right? Of course. And I'm joking about the ROI thing, but yeah, I like that. But I know you kind of hit on it. I do want to hit on one of your other articles here, Paul. You said podcasting's new world, groupies, stage fright, and sold out shows. What's that about?
Well, it's funny. I kind of see this as part 2. 4 or 5 episodes, Dave went to what was the event in Seattle?
PodCon.
PodCon, which is from the makers of VidCon. And Dave saw this whole new world. And it was, I really enjoyed the interview with Dave. And there are people, because of the intimacy that we've been chatting about, because of the difference that we've been chatting about, who will pay good money to go see a show get recorded. You know, and of course, maybe someone here might have some experience with shows getting recorded in front of a live audience. You know, but this is where we can begin to look at models that make sense. You know, this is where we can begin to look at the things that might actually work for us. You know, having Dave speak at my podcast event, I don't have one, but I'm saying to have Dave speak at my podcast event, everybody's done that. But to have Dave record an episode of the School of Podcasting at my podcast event kicks it up a notch. You know, what if at PodFest, you did the Roundtable, you know, and there starts to become a interactive option that's really, really exciting. And it's the t-shirt sales. It's the, it's all the ancillary stuff that really becomes interesting. It's not, I'm going to get rich with CPM, or even though I only have 3 listeners, all of them are going to pay $1,000 each on Patreon. You know, this is a model that begins really, really interesting. And I personally, I'm involved in a little project right now where we're looking at a batch of performance centers around the country that podcasters could tour to, and everything would be set up. Because the thing is, you just need a table and a microphone,
Right.
you know, and you don't need all the stuff that you need for a traditional show. And so, you know, a lot of, you know, if Dave came to town, I'd show up, and if the cover charge was 10 and I had to buy a beer, I'd do that in a heartbeat. You know, and I think there's a whole opportunity for podcasters. Groupies, maybe not so much, but the whole game, it's really
it depends on who you are. I've seen
I'm
just
sure
being
you have.
just being associated with a show that has crazy fans.
Try being a female. Yeah.
I know. I don't want to try that. It sounds way too hard. It sounds way too hard. You guys rock.
But we wouldn't judge you if you did.
Yeah, that's right. And you know what? It might still happen.
Yeah, it's a lot like the music business, because you think about it.
It is the music business.
Yeah,
It's
musicians
the same thing.
aren't charged. You can't make any money on your product, but you make it on the tour. So
I asked when I went on tour with PodSave. I asked one of the first things I asked. I said, "Is this more about pressing the flesh with the fans, or is this a money generator?" Oh no, it generates money, and it has to. The costs that go into taking a show on the road if just a mid-sized venue, which is 2,000, 3,000 people, massive. But I've seen when you have shows that have a rabid following, which most podcasts do, and the venue can fit the size of your audience, right? I mean, it could be 100 people, right, that you get paid to come out, and if you promote it well in advance, I think that the podcast fans are the type of fans that will show up. I mean, I'm wearing a shirt right now. I mean, we'd see all their product got sold out before the show even started. They couldn't even ship enough product. I mean, it's just insane. And it's a whole new world, I think, for podcasters who are being able to think about doing these shows in person. Has anyone taken their show? We've done Podcasters Roundtable live at that defunct conference.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was called at the time we did it. It was New Media Expo.
Yeah.
1, 2. We did it there. We did it live at maybe Podcast Movement. No, maybe not. I don't know. We've done it live I think at least twice. Total fun. And we generate, I think at the New Media Expo,
we
they
clogged
had
the lane.
Yeah, people were jealous. They said, "What are you guys doing? Send some of that audience this way." So it's just a ton of fun. I mean, even just for the experience of doing it, you should take a show. And I know a lot of podcasters in this community have gone out and done live shows for their community, and it's been real successful. Depending on what you call success. I mean, I'm not talking about getting rich here.
I haven't gone live with my show necessarily, but when the book comes out, I put this out to my Facebook group and on my podcast. I said, I'm willing to go on a tour. I'm in Connecticut, so I can kind of go on well, not even just a book tour to different bookstores, because if I'm sitting there reading my book, I'm basically doing the podcast live in a bookstore. So I put it out to my fans. I said, hey, if you want me to come down, if you're on the eastern side of the United States, come down for bar trivia, come down for a game night. I couldn't believe so many people, you got to come to Atlanta. We have the Coca-Cola Museum. I want to take you there so bad. So now it's like, oh, wow, these people out of the woodwork. And my husband's like, are you really? Are you sure you want to do this with these strangers on the internet? And I'm like, that's fine. It's fine.
It is kind of like you start off, maybe a lot of us start off just recording a podcast and putting it out on the internet, and the MP3 goes out to the world. And then like Paul was saying at the beginning of, using Facebook Live or whatever, but you take the next step of, live streaming your show somehow. And so then it becomes an event that people are tuning into, and they get the sort of live effect, I guess, and an audience, and they see each other even in the chat room or wherever. They see that they're not alone wherever they happen to be in the world, and they're listening to your show with other people and commenting and stuff. And I think, it's just a natural sort of evolution of this medium to go to like an actual live thing, not just Facebook Live, but reality live, where you actually have people in a room together, drinking a beer, listening to your podcast, and hopefully laughing at your jokes. So.
Yeah, I could tell you one weird experience, because on the show, when we're recording live in a theater, there are no ads. We're not doing ads. They do host read ads, but they don't do it in a live show. People screaming out, demanding that they do the ads, because the ads are so compelling and funny these people are like, no, that's part of the show. We want the ads. So I thought that was, I'm sitting back there recording and hearing people from the stage are like, wait, what? Oh, you want us to do the ads? Hilarious.
There's the dynamic of live and people that we begin to forget about as well. I went to a buddy of mine, with a buddy of mine to an 80s band that, you know, at times was opening actually for U2. And of course, now we were at a venue where, you know, they couldn't even, the balcony was closed that night. But the funny thing was my buddy was like, really, $25 for a ticket? I can't believe that. But at the end of the show, he goes back to the merch table and he gets a t-shirt and a 5 CD set, you know, of tunes that they haven't released to the digital. And what was funny was the guy goes, hey, it's still set for pounds. Is that okay? My buddy says yes. We turn around, we walk away, and I asked my buddy, do you even know what the pound exchange rate is? You know, he's like, no, but I really wanted the t-shirt, you know, and he spent $100, you know, in addition to the beer, in addition to the $25 for the ticket, because it was a live event. And that's where it begins to get really interesting for us, because if we showed up at an event, and even if there were only 20 people there, but if they each spent $100, I mean, we're at the point now where we're almost paying for plane tickets, we're almost paying for hotel, and it's the dynamic of live is really interesting, and even more importantly, though, is just the dynamic of, you know, so many people think it's CPM is the only model. Like, you know, I'm going to make all my money by GoDaddy ads. And we just have options that are bigger than I guess GoDaddy hasn't been doing it for a while, but Audible ads or Blue Apron ads or that type of thing. Ads, you know, we've got some really, really interesting options, and we just need to explore them as an industry.
Very cool. Anyone have a piece? I feel like someone's going to say something.
Do you feel that live shows, when you repurpose them and put them out to your regular audience, do you get a different reaction to them? Because I know I've talked to you, Ray, before, because my husband and I both listen to the show, and my husband is just astonished that a live show has that good of audio quality. Because I've done that where I've listened to, oh, we're doing a live show, and they put it out, and it's like this echoey room, and you kind of have other people laughing, and you're like, I don't know if I'm into this as much, because it's not that intimate.
You're right. It is different. And you know, it almost goes to the same question where back in the day, Dave, where sometimes you'd throw a video into your audio feed. It's just different, right? Putting something different in your feed can throw off your audience. I've run into people who say, yeah, I don't care for the live that much. Or sometimes, you know, you'll have a show that does an interview once in a while, and like, yeah, I don't care about the interviews so much. So I think it's more about just something different. Do you guys ever put something else different in your feed, or have you done live shows where people are like, yeah, I don't like the live so much? But
I almost always, whenever I get to do a big how to podcast speech, I always record something and I put it in my feed.
That's right. And you know what? Okay, so I guess we're not the target audience, and we are, because that's who's listening to the show. When you do that, my feeling is, I'm glad he was able to share it, that they let him, right? And I find that a lot of, I don't know if you guys have given talks before, but I find that most places let you use your talk, like in your podcast, which I find I appreciate that. It's not just stuck behind a paywall. Second of all, I always think I'm glad he took the effort to record it and share it with me. I feel like I got to be there for something I didn't pay for, but that's my personal feeling.
I did an event once way back in the early days of when it was the Podcast Brothers. And they had that show the day before. They had the paid thing, and you know, you had to pay to go to speak at it and whatnot. But what was funny was there were going to be 20 people in the audience, yet the Gigabox channel that this thing went on had 25,000 downloads. So I said in front of the group, I said, "Welcome to a live taping of the next episode of the Podcast Tools Show." You know, and then I just got to play with them while the most of the people who heard it were the ones who heard it later. So it's it's a mix. Just set it up. Just don't try to pawn it off as a regular show, but just set it up that, hey, I got the chance to do this live. I did this here. Here's the recording. Thrilled to bring it to you.
Right. Present the value at that point, right? Not just throw it on top of somebody.
Yeah. Well, to me, going back to my days as a teacher, half the success of a class is in the setup. When here's what's happening. So when I'm getting ready to put I forgot I had it on my phone. I have a recording of Dan Miller explaining how he got taken care of business on his show and I was on my phone. And so when I put that in my show, I'm going to say, hey, this was recorded in the hallway at Social Media Marketing World. So when people go, and it's who cares at that point, and they they get the content. So
yeah, it'd be different if you were like, I'm now going forward going to always record my podcast that was previously recorded in the studio on my iPhone next to a wind machine or something.
Right.
And then obviously everybody just unsubscribe, right? Like, whereas, you know, if they don't like the crowd or they think it's whatever, they'll just skip that episode, but they'll still stay subscribed. You would think anyways, for the most part. So should be safe to do that. Yeah.
And I think anytime you do something different, you're going to lose some, gain some. So, you know, you do have to wait. And I do sympathize. I get it. The sound is very different, Emily, in that case. And I have had people, someone tell me to my face I didn't like the sound of live, and I was like, oh yeah, well, I recorded that, so it's nice being friends with you. No, just kidding. So, appreciate the feedback, appreciate that, but there's some PR verbiage. I gotta say, Paul, I clicked on this article. It must have been the second time I clicked open this article, and now I can't read it because it's the Wall Street Journal. So
yeah,
that's
Wall Street Journal, you suck.
Yeah.
Paywalls, a whole other roundtable.
We put out our podcast for free. Wall Street Journal, come on.
The whole hole to fall down there. Anyways, all right, we should wrap up. Not should, but we will. It's a good one. I enjoyed the format. So hopefully if you were listening or watching, you enjoyed it as well. We will probably try it again. And whatever. We're always tweaking here at the Roundtable. Like Paul likes to experiment with the report, we're happy to experiment here with the Roundtable. So that said, give us where we can find your one podcast, Chris. And thanks for joining us. Chris, you're up first, actually.
Oh, I was just about to take a spot.
Yeah, I know. That's why you're up first.
Goodstuff.fm is where you can go and find one podcast or others, if there happens to be others there.
All right. Well, Chris was talking about, I don't know if you guys have recorded any or you relaunched as a similar format to what we're doing even here today, right? Is discussing topics on Show Me Your Mic. That's a podcast about podcasting. This audience would enjoy it. I don't know. Is it coming back?
I hope so. I hate promising and then not delivering. So I'm
you can do that here. It's okay. No one's listening.
It's definitely coming back then, for sure. Go subscribe and leave a rating or review for sure.
Very cool. If anything, go check out the logo. I think
Does it help, Chris? Does it help?
That's right.
I'll tell you.
Dave Jackson, thanks as always for doing the heavy lifting as the co-host of this show.
Yeah, thanks. I'm with you. I thought it went really fast. I was like, holy cow. So yeah, you can find me, Dave Jackson, at schoolofpodcasting.com.
Yeah, we almost did 1.5 hours. So, people in the chat seem to enjoy it. I don't know. Oh, there's some jokes about ROI. I'll have to check those out. All right. Emily, thanks for joining us once again.
Yeah, thanks for having me. You can find my podcast at thestorybehindpodcast.com. And that is a Libsyn podcast page, and it is amazing. So plug for Libsyn.
There you go. Making it easier all the time. All right, Paul, welcome back, of course. And thanks again for joining us.
Where do I get my t-shirt? I want my t-shirt.
Yeah, well, you're not going to make it, buddy. Sorry.
Thepodcastreport.com. Season 6 very soon. So should be fun.
Very cool. We should probably talk to Paul why he's doing seasons, but we'll save it because that's content that we want. No one's listening at this point, so we don't want to waste it. All right. So thanks, everyone. Podcastersroundtable.com, of course, youtube.com/podcastersroundtable. If you enjoy viewing, there's a whole library of stuff over there. And we will see you for round 109. Wave goodbye. We're out.